Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Good morning and welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio, where top performers share their secrets to help you achieve your personal and your professional goals. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and together with my amazing guests, we bring you inspiring and actionable insights to take your life and your business to the next level. Ranked in the top 2% globally, this podcast is a must listen, and it's because of my guests. So whether you're tuning in for entrepreneurial tips, career advice, or personal development strategies, get ready to turn inspiration into action, challenges into triumphs, and dreams into reality. And our guest today is Dawn Taylor, who is a distinguished healthcare leader with over 40 years of experience. Dawn currently serves as clinical professor of healthcare leadership and management at the Jindal School of Management, and he directs the Alliance for Physician Leadership. As a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, he has worn many hats. He's been CEO of hospitals, COO of a major USAF Academic Medical Center, and even led the largest trauma hospital in Iraq. His expertise covers healthcare operations, strategy, and leadership development. And this is important. His career spans both military and civilian healthcare systems. He's held executive roles at VA medical centers and led critical missions like the HHS Emergency Intake Site in Dallas, Texas. With degrees in architecture and health administration, he brings a unique perspective to healthcare management. He's also an author, and he continues to teach and mentor emerging healthcare leaders. And his focus, leadership, strategy, and transforming the U.S. healthcare system. That's a big job. So I'm excited to have him here with us to share his insights and experiences. Dawn, good morning and welcome to the show. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you for the opportunity, Denise. Really excited about having a conversation today.
Let's just get this out of the way. I know your wife, so.
Well, that's good too, yes.
Yeah, Judy Hoberman, and she's been on the podcast several times, and she was introduced to me by another good friend, Jane Blaufus. So we all kind of know each other. We're all in the same little pond here. So, and thank you, Judy. Love you.
Yes.
So anyway, why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself and what you're passionate about? What drives you in your day-to-day life and your work?
Wow. It's those are two big topics there. Who I am is really more important than what I do. And I think who I am is still a work in progress. Let me just say that. Those of us who have a few miles behind us look back and go, wow, how did we ever end up where we are today? And I'm certainly no exception. My background is I grew up a country kid, kind of a rural kid in the suburbs of Dallas, and had, sort of early Texas values and beliefs. But as we were mentioning earlier, I was fortunate to have parents who really set expectations and taught me, how to, really work ethic. They taught me to be responsible, to be accountable, to respect others. But they gave me a lot of independence and freedom. So, at 16, 17 years old, I was working. At 18, I was managing a little fast food restaurant of my own, and thought, wow, life is easy. I'm making a few $100 a month and all is good. But what I didn't realize was how much responsibility that was teaching me at the time, that I had people who counted on me to abide by principles and to look to me for leadership at an early age. I was blessed to be, to to be able to go to college with a scholarship from the Air Force. And as you mentioned, Denise, is architecture. But you go, well, how in the world do you get into healthcare from architecture? Don't know. I'm one of those kids that has a little bit of a left and right brain. So I love artistic things, but I also had a little fondness for mathematics and engineering. Architecture seemed to be the right fit. Matter of fact, it was. I sat one semester in a electrical engineering class and realized those weren't my people. So architecture fit well. Well, just so happened my first assignment in the Air Force was in a medical research lab where I got to really see medicine and particularly research medicine firsthand. And I was fascinated with its complexity. After that, I went on and designed hospitals and clinics for the Air Force internationally, domestically, and then went to grad school to study how they were planned and how healthcare benefits and policies create access, which creates the need for brick and mortar. And from there, went on to administration, policy development, and then, as you mentioned earlier, commanding and leading CEOs throughout the rest of my career. So it was a fascinating path, but it wasn't always as clear as it may seem. And part of it is we learn. I worked hard my first, let me just say, 20 years or so to differentiate myself. And I would say I was probably a little more selfish than I should have been, and didn't really quite understand leadership as I do today. I was trying to differentiate me rather than differentiate my team. And that was a
Said
tough lesson.
that. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because we were talking in our virtual green room before we decided to go live, and we were talking about leadership. And listen, I would be remiss if I did not mention that this weekend was a very tough weekend for America. And I'm referencing, of course, the assassination attempt of President Trump. It's not something you ever want to see happen in your country. And thank goodness it didn't damage him terribly. But you were talking in the green room about leadership and when it's time to step aside. I'm trying to, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Can you share with the audience what you were sharing with me then? Because it was so important.
Sure. Um, we have there's a process in the military where you rotate senior leaders at every 2 to 3 years. And people on the outside look at this and go, how do you ever have competency or have enough knowledge in a role if you move that often? Well, I would tell you, you've been developed for the competency and the knowledge for that role most of your life if they've done it right. I've always had bosses who prepared me to replace them. That's one. Number two, what really happens, and I've seen it happen both in organizations, particularly in healthcare, I'm seeing it, but also in our political realm, you can stay too long. Because once you get to a point where you believe you're bigger than the role and the responsibility you're privileged to have, then you're dangerous. And the military sees that. They move you before you become bigger than the job you're supposed to do. And remember, that job is a privilege. You're humbled and honored to serve that role for a very specific period of time. When it's over, it's very deliberate. It's a celebration. It's a moment. The guidon is literally handed from one to the other. When you release the guidon, you walk directly to your car, you leave, and you never return to that organization. That's out of respect for the next leader, and that is out of you understanding your focus to the next opportunity of leadership. It's very clear. I think industry and I think our nation could learn from that because then individuals,
Absolutely, we need term
yeah,
limits, no question.
absolutely. Well, term limits are one element of that, job rotations. You see too often, I see this in healthcare, executives stay 30 and 40 years. you just become the institution. It becomes you. It's all about serving you in many, many ways. You began to not listen, you began to feel very entitled, and it just becomes quote unquote your kingdom. And that is a problem because people today expect to have a voice. They want to be respected, they want to be asked, they want to be engaged. And that becomes a barrier to that if the individual just stays too long. And I only echo this because of my military experience and the power of that transition and the way we respected and understood how that happens.
Shared that with me, and I shared with you, this is the political silly season that just started here. We're going to get the little door spam, and people are going to be knocking on the door. I don't answer it. There's a sign on my door that says, if you're not invited or expected, do not knock or ring. And darned if they don't do it anyway. They'll look me right in the eye and punch that doorbell. And I'll send them a little wave that's, you can imagine what that little wave is, and I just keep on going. But I did open the door one time, and it was a man I knew. I had worked with him. He was a physician, and he had spent 2 years in, he went to Washington, and he changed. He really did. So
Mm,
he pretty well knew he was not going to be reelected. So he was going to go lateral. He was going to go to another part of government. And he said, I opened the door and I said, hey, doctor, and I don't say his name. How are you? He said, I'm great. Can I get your vote? And I said, no. And it shocked him. I said, you've been there 2 terms. Go home. And I shut the door.
mm,
And he did lose, by the way. But
mm.
I wasn't all happy about that. To me, you've done your time. Now get out of the way.
Right. No, that is it's very important that leaders understand there is a life cycle for their leadership tenure and when it's time to go. And we see that on the national stage and we see that almost in any industry. Um, and a lot of it has to do with the power, and I will say in healthcare there's a lot of potential and a lot of influence for profit, and then there's also the political interest in power that's obtained and used in the healthcare system, and that really drives most of the direction of healthcare today, not the needs of patients, not the needs of clients or customers or people. It's really the pursuit of power, profit and power, because healthcare is a unique industry that thrives and frankly survives on the needs of people. And it's unfortunate that it's focused on people's sickness rather than on people's health and wellness.
So, Don, in your view, what constitutes true success when you're in a healthcare leadership role? What are you seeing?
Mm. Well, true success is when here, and this is the way I looked at it. I had a little bit of a formula when I would step into a leadership role. I prepare months ahead of time outside of the organization. Healthcare, it's easier to do because there's a lot of documentation, a lot of reviews, a lot of events, a lot of metrics you can do. I studied the organization very carefully without ever stepping a foot there. And by the time I arrived, I pretty well knew where the problems were, not only in procedures, policies, but in people. I pretty well knew where those were. Now, did I walk in the first day and say, here's what we're going to do? No, I didn't. I began to, that research ahead of time gave me a little bit of a roadmap to look for the second data point. Do I see validation of what I've read? Do I have a yellow flashing light somewhere that needs more attention than the other? So I would observe that, but I would set up scenarios to observe that specifically. But I would walk in with a vision, going, "We want to do things. I want to do things not different. I want to do things better for you, and I need your help and I need your support." And so the first little bit was me sharing a little bit of a high level vision, and it was generic enough that people would understand. And it was usually 3 goals to achieve, no more than 3, not 2, not 4, 3. And my promise was over my tenure, we achieve these 3. That's all we do. We don't add another one. We do 3 goals. And if we get them done early, we celebrate. That's what we do. But everybody then understood that there was a finite expectation. Now, people would certainly validate my perceptions, and once that was validated, good leaders have to take action quickly. There's no second
Right.
chances. You make decisions. A great accountability moment resonates with many others, and you have to be firm in making that decision.
I wrote this down. I scribble a lot while I'm listening. Why three goal? I do because I need to go back and ask him that, and I didn't mean to interrupt you earlier. I'm
No, no
sorry.
problem.
Why three goals? Because I do the same thing. When I start my day, I have three things that I must do that day. And I'm implacable about it. It's three things. It's going to happen. It may be 2 in the morning before I finish it, but I'm not going to sleep until I've done those. But why three things?
Well, I've always found two's not challenging enough. Four is a bit overwhelming. Three seems to be the right balance for people to, first of all, understand, because each of those goals have sub-elements, and it gets a little more complex. And usually within three, you can find absolutely one or two that resonates with everyone, and they can get behind it and can follow. And I just feel three was a comfortable number. The key to it, though, is not having people feel that if they give it all for the three, that you're going to throw a fourth in there or a fifth in there, that you're not just going to keep working them. People want to get to a plateau where they can celebrate and relax and and just find balance in their life. And you have to give them vision, at least a visual of that plateau where we're gonna stop now. We're in maintenance mode for a period of time. I'm not going to keep layering things on you. That happens way too often now, and particularly in healthcare. Once profitability is achieved, they just want more profit, just more profit. You give a politician power, they just want more power. And they become greedy in the pursuit of both. Leaders cannot do that. Leaders are not about power. They're not about personal profit. They're about serving those that work. The greatest advice I ever had was from a one-star pediatrician who said, Don, only work for those who work for you. Never work for me. And oh my gosh, did that resonate with me?
Again, say that again. I'm writing that down.
Only work for those who work for you. In other words, serve them. Your bosses, if your people are happy, your boss is going to be happy. But you have to serve the people you're privileged to lead.
Exactly. And I think so many people don't understand that whatever business you're in or industry you're in, whether you're a solopreneur, whether you're a CEO, we're people. And I think that gets lost in the spreadsheets. We're
Oh,
people.
it's so powerful because even when I coach, and I coach positions now and a few executive healthcare leaders, and in that coaching, the first thing we do is we dissect how they think and the barriers they have to thinking about serving others, because you have to rewire your brain to with a sense of service. As I and one of my there's a let me just tell you, based upon the events of the weekend, there is one line from a letter that Melania Trump wrote, and it said, "Politics, opinions, policy are inferior to love."
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, from a leadership perspective, caring for people is the that's the pinnacle of leadership. That's the pinnacle.
How do we
Everything
get
else
so
is
lost? I mean, I don't understand how we can just well, we need more profit or t- term limits. I'm not going to
Well,
rant about
no,
term limits, but some of these people have made millions of dollars on $177 a year. And we're supposed to just accept that? I don't
well,
accept it.
well, and see, and that's where we come into you have to, and I would, just a parallel path, I would say you have to have full transparency and accountability too. And that doesn't happen in that world. And there's a lot of bias in the way those are evaluated. But if you focus on the well-being of people, decisions become so much better, so much clearer to you because you have this perception of not only what they need, but every issue that's brought forward fits in the construct of will it serve them better or will it not? So you quickly know what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Your priorities are much clearer because those are structured by a sense of, by a very deliberate set of values that you have and that you hope align with the organization that you serve in. And once those values align and you're serving people,
Right.
then you've got purpose. That purpose becomes enriched.
And this
And
is something that can be taught, isn't it? People say, "Oh, well, I'm accustomed to just barking orders and telling people just do what you're told and nobody gets hurt." That doesn't work.
no, it can be taught, but it can be it it you say I can teach it. I can make someone aware of it because I think deep down people are really wired to help each other. I think they're wired to serve another.
I agree with you. And listen, I am a highly committed introvert, highly committed. I fully intend to be the little old lady sitting on the porch rocker with a bottle of gin and 8 cats and a shotgun yelling, "Get off the grass." But, and I might make it, who knows? But, but the thing is, I serve people all day, every day through this podcast, through conversations with people like you, through the work that I do. And I don't have to show my face to do it.
No, but the most powerful tool a leader can have? A mirror.
Ah, okay, keep going.
Yeah. Because as you said earlier, you have to face yourself. And I encourage all leaders every day, just take a moment and reflect on who you are, what you see, and how you're perceived. Because that's really important to have a moment of reflection, whether that's done through meditation or whether that's literally looking in the mirror and reciting things. Some of the exercises we do here for the physicians in our program are we ask them to not only write values, but write affirmation statements that daily activates those values. What am I doing? And I ask for three. What are three things you do a day to assure you are ethical or that you're honest or you're trustworthy or you're compassionate? What do you do each day? It's really powerful to do that. Judy's all about serving women. You talk about that. She's all about helping women feel great about themselves. And I can tell you, everywhere we go, every day, Judy finds a woman, a stranger, to walk up to and compliment her on something. You should see the power that has in an individual.
I know. Listen, when I head out the door, I've got my big black Ray-Bans on. I've got my black baseball cap on. I do that because I'm pasty pale. I look like curdled milk most of the time. But I know sunshine is not my friend. But I go out thinking I'm going to wear my resting bitch face and people will leave me alone. They don't. It's the South. Everybody says, "Hey, how are you doing?" And they want to talk with you. And I actually enjoy my little outings to the grocery store, wherever I'm going to go. It's enough to invigorate me without draining me. And you just said something that reminded me of something that years ago this happened. And There was a lady, a beautiful lady. She was in front of me in the grocery store. And she was probably in her 80s, if I had to take a guess. And she was so well put together. I mean, her clothes were ironed, her hair was freshly done, and she had on the cutest sparkly sandals. And I said, I love your shoes. We both checked out. We stood over where the buggies go. We don't call them carts here, they're buggies. And we talked for an hour. I have never forgotten that woman. I've never seen
Mm,
her since, but it really stuck with me. And it was a lesson to me. Denise, get out of your own way.
there you go. And what's wrong with making someone else feel good about themselves? What's wrong with that? Why wouldn't that be a priority in our lives? Why wouldn't we do that every day? And we just don't.
Well, I think we just don't think about it. We're so caught up in what's going on. We're watching TV or we're listening to the news, which I don't do as a rule. We're so caught up in the minutia of what it's going on. We're not focusing and taking a deep, long look, as you just said. What are the three things? We're not really looking within. And I think that's a big mistake that we make as humans. We're not looking within and we're not doing what we can out there.
Yeah, if we wait to be told what we should worry about, we're in trouble. Um,
No
because
kidding.
that's where the and I hate to say the political side, but the our politics is driven off fear. Everything is driven off creating fear, and because that motivates us to action. Everything's about self-preservation, and so through that, the politics guide us into self-preservation, which means I'm going to take action. I'm becoming and I hate the term activist. I hate that term, even though our narrative today has normalized that. But how about just I'm an influencer, or I'm a collaborator. I hate the term activist because it quickly can slip into something that's more violent. And I don't like that. I don't like that. We need a lot less violence. We need less violent thought, less violent narrative. And and that's but yet they go to the behavior side or the manifested side on the other and go, well, it's gun violence. No, it's all violence. It's violent thought. That's what we have to repair. Violent thought and the disrespect for each other. So that point of the politics goes into fear. And I will talk about, and I speak to this in healthcare. Healthcare politically is influenced because healthcare is a very powerful tool for them to create fear. And they do that through that influence of power. And so and I wrote this about a year ago, about the ultimate freedom for an American or for you as an individual is to be healthy. If you are healthy, you don't need health care. The politicians count on you needed it to influence you through fear. The private sector counts on you needing health care so they can profit from you. The best patient in the world is somebody who's chronically ill and managed with recurring healthcare needs. That's an ATM that never stops giving. The real freedom is to be healthy, is to break away from the dependency on the healthcare system and focus on health as an outcome. And I get very frustrated that we do not have that as a nation. We just focus on healthcare. And the assumption is that healthcare makes you healthy. It does not. Healthcare isn't always safe.
No. I'll tell you honestly, if you get sick in my house, and I haven't been sick in years, literally, I haven't had a cold, I haven't had the flu in probably 15 years, largely because I got divorced and the cooties aren't coming in the door anymore. But seriously, but no, I take it back. I came down with shingles of all things about 3 Thanksgivings ago, and I was pretty sure I needed to cut my arm off. That hurt. It was horrible.
Mm,
But if you get sick in my house, you've got I'll give you some options. One is apple cider vinegar. The other is unbuffered aspirin. I might share a Benadryl with you, but if I get stung by a bee, I better get my Benadryl or go to the hospital. And the Tums, did I mention Tums? That's it. If you are really going to get sick in my home, you're going to have to go take care of yourself, because I've got
Yeah.
nothing in the house that I can give you or share with you. I stay healthy, deliberately stay healthy.
But look at our society as a whole, health-wise. We have among the lowest longevity of the economically developed nations in the world. Lowest, and it dropped during COVID 3 years.
And obesity is a huge issue.
Obesity is a massive issue. And by the way, it starts very early in life now because we have sedentary children. We have children who are, babysat through videos and who are not encouraged for physical outside activity. And the kids are becoming obese, not to mention nutrition and all the other issues. But the point is, we're creating a future ATM for the healthcare system. We're not focusing on health. Our system is built on more healthcare, but the government focuses on insurance. You're insured, you're healthy. That is not the case. The assumption politically is that if you're insured, you get access to healthcare. If you get access to healthcare, you're healthy. That is not the case. Insurance doesn't guarantee access, and access to healthcare doesn't ensure health. And they all claim the outcome they desire is health. I'm not so sure either one really wants that.
I haven't experienced this, but I've had friends who said, I went into the doctor. I was going for a checkup, whatever it was, and this guy said, "Oh, you've got to you need to go on a diet, blah, 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 blah." And the doctor was terribly overweight. So don't preach at me if you're not doing it yourself.
Hmm. Absolutely. And there's, and don't get me wrong, I love physicians. I've worked with them almost my entire life. I love the way they're wired. I love their heart. I love the way they're impassioned to care for others. I get a little frustrated with the system that has taken that away from them over over their decades of service. And that's what I like to do in our program is not only we teach them, like award them an MBA and the business skills they need, but we also teach them about personal leadership over this time. We create a community that they can trust. Our classes are like mastermind sessions. They can come in, be completely transparent, completely vulnerable, ask any question they want, and there's no place in their life that's safe for them. Where they work is not a safe place, by and large. So we give them that place to be transparent, and we give them a community across our docs flying from all over the country, all specialties, I mean, very, very diverse. So they find a place with which to bond and to trust others with tough questions, and a place they can heal themselves and reflect on maybe I'm not as bad as I thought, or maybe I'm worse than I thought. But we give them a place for that.
That you have to provide a place, and I'm glad you do, where they can go to decompress and say, you know what, we're not insane. We're being flattened.
We're and they have this kind of broken fulfillment because remember, they're kind of taught to think a certain way through medical school. And I love it. But so here at the university, this is just this last year, I stopped teaching an undergrad class of pre-med about the US healthcare system. And I love teaching the pre-med students, their junior, senior, undergrad, but the time I just couldn't do it time wise. But the lessons from those young adults were incredible. So my first day of class, here's a couple of things I'll share with you. You talk about leadership. I start teaching leadership the first day in that class. The topic was the US healthcare system. But they walk in on their first day and I make them remove all technology. No phones, no iPads, no computers on the desk. Everything put away. You can only have a pen and a pad of paper on the table. That's it. For the entire class. For the entire semester. It's incredible how frustrating they would become and frustrated they would become as the class would go, especially those that were in the 3-hour session. And then at the end of the semester, they thanked me because it was the first time in their lives they had completely detached from technology. And they go, "Oh my gosh, I actually
Act.
heard what you
They
were
had
saying."
right. They had to sit up, listen, pay attention, and make eye contact.
Right. I said, "There's no such thing as multitasking, and all of you think there is no such thing. You can only do one thing at a time and do it well. And in this room, you paid me to tell you things. You're going to pay attention." And they love it. The other thing I would have them do on the first day, and it was their first quiz, handwrite for me a half page why I choose to serve others in healthcare. I have hundreds of these stories, hundreds. And these kids are so deep and so rich. There's moments in their life that said, this was the time, that was the moment the switch flipped. One young lady, first generation from Vietnam, she said, "I was 11 years old and found my father passed out in an alcoholic coma in the bathtub." She goes, "I called 911 and the paramedic took me aside and said I saved his life and that I was a hero." She said, "That moment that I felt, that hero moment," she goes, "I have to have it again. I need to do that more." She goes, "My dad defeated his demons and he's my biggest fan. And I'm on my journey now to heal others." I mean, you're going, well, what is it about our healthcare system that takes that away from our future physicians? When do they lose that? Because they get into our system and they get lost. They just lose that sense of purpose, that deep sense of service to others, because our system doesn't serve patients. They serve the business. I don't even think the patients are the customers any longer. It's the payers. The insurers are the customers because they dictate what happens. The patients are just the means by which payment is made. And the physician's hands are tied on what they can do to heal individuals because the things people need to be healthy aren't paid, aren't reimbursed. Very frustrating system right now. But it's, part of me has got all this in my head, so I am working on a second book right now, titled Healing, and it's about the well-being of physicians. And I'm hoping to have that out at the end of this year. About half, we're myself and a co-author, we're about 60% through it right now.
It's ready. When it's published, will you come back?
Sure.
Okay, good. I just wrote a
Absolutely.
note. You're coming back, and I'll have the book in front of me. Um, I love reading books from my guests. I've shared this with Judy, your wife. I have hundreds of books in this room. Every single book in these bookshelves, this is my entrepreneurial library, literally. Every single book in this room was gifted to me by people like you, and I've read them, I review them, and I honor them. So please do come
Mm,
back.
I
And I
sure
want
will.
Thank you. And I wanted to, one of my questions was, can you share a moment from your career where you felt you made significant impact on someone's life? But you almost circumvented me by telling the story about the girl from Vietnam. Are there any moments, it's like you're reading my brain here. Are there any moments where you just went, aha?
Let me share a story that changed me. I was a mid-career, my first time supervisor in a academic med center. Uh, had a great boss who was a compassionate man who sort of took me under his wing and saw me as someone with a little potential later on. Um, but I was pretty caught up in my own little world of being smarter than everybody and trying to make points all the time. But it was all about me, differentiating me. Had a team of 100, but I wasn't as I said earlier, it wasn't about me making sure the team was recognized. It was about me being recognized. I hired a young man who was impeccable. This was in the military. He was absolutely perfect in his uniform. He was a young African American man named Maurice Woods, and I handpicked him to join our team. His office was about two doors down from mine. And one Saturday morning, my boss calls me and said, "Don, I need to share with you that Maurice took his life this morning." And I was devastated,
Oh
had no
no.
clue. So we Monday we have what they call critical incident uh, discussions with the team, where we're able to talk and kind of decompress a little. My admin person, when it got to her turn, she stood up, she pointed to me, and she goes, "He killed him. He worked him to death."
Oh no.
And I I thought I was going to throw up. And it was, I couldn't get it out of my head. I couldn't get, I still have that image in my head of her pointing at me and saying that. Um, but I said, you know what? I'm just going to have to, for the sake of the team, take it and not say anything in my own defense. So we got through the week, and later that, actually it was later that week, the boss called me up to his office and said, "Okay, I want to let you know a few things. You had nothing to do with Maurice's death. He had a few things going on in his life that was complicating his career, not the least of which was a complicated marriage, a wife that was threatening him, and he killed himself on the anniversary of his brother's murder. And he left a statement to that fact. Um, he said Maurice had a death wish, and he was going to fulfill it sometime or another." I went, "Wow, okay." And he goes, "No, but you're not off the hook." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You weren't available." And I said, "Well, yeah, I mean, my door's always open." He goes, "No, you weren't available. You didn't know Maurice. You should have known him. You had the opportunity, but you didn't know him." And I will tell you that moment on, he goes, "Oh, and by the way, he stayed like, that perception of him working to death. He stayed late at night because it was the only place he was proud of himself. He loved being at work." He goes, "It wasn't you making him stay. The perception was you made him stay." I went, "Wow." He goes, "But you have to change." So that moment on, I will tell you, I changed my entire leadership focus. It was always about everyone but me. I knew everything about everybody who worked near me or around me. I walked the organization. In the future, I never had organizational meetings on Friday afternoons. Never. I walked around on Fridays, thanking people for what they'd done all week. Every Friday I did that. And it was not to look for problems. It was always to thank them. If I saw a problem, I went back and had somebody who was a friend of theirs reach back and ask, "Are they doing okay? Do they need some help?" But Maurice taught me that lesson. And every time I speak, I mention his name. It's just important to me that Maurice is recognized, and his legacy kind of lives in me now, of the lesson he taught.
I'm wiping my ears, my tears on my cat's tail. Seriously. It
Mm,
I'm so glad that you had a Maurice, that Maurice was there and he's still there. Not that he did what he did. Let's not have a brother who committed suicide when he was quite young, but we knew he would. He tried when
yeah.
he was young, and there was never going to be any time where he was going to make elderly bones. It wasn't going to happen. And this was many, many years ago, and I'm still mad at him. I'm still pissed off. And here you're sharing a deeply personal story about Maurice, but you have gratitude for him. I'm still mad at my brother. That's the difference
Mm.
between us. I need to work on me and tell him I'm sorry I'm mad at him.
Yeah.
Gratitude, I think, is, excuse me, I'm not supposed to cry on my own show. Gratitude is something that I think we don't pay enough attention to.
No, but I just see, if anything I ever do in leadership that's positive, he gets a little credit, and that's part of his legacy. Um, his legacy lives through me. And I have to make sure that I remember him and I recognize him, um, because he had such a powerful influence on the way I lead and to pivot me from serving me to serving everyone but me.
Did you ever have a conversation with the admin who accused you, or listen, when you're going through grief brain, you don't make sense. We all know this.
No, I
So
never had a
did you ever have a
conversation with her.
Yeah.
No, but I did get her promoted. I was a big fan. Her pride would never let her address that again because she was embarrassed that she'd done it. But I got her a big promotion and supported her for her next opportunity. Um, so, and we stayed, friends for a number of years. Just
I'm
remember,
not often speechless, but I am right now.
she only could see what she could see. She didn't she didn't understand the rest of the story, which often we do. Remember, what we see is only a fraction of the truth. We have to remember that as well. That's a whole other leadership lesson about we have to be patient about her. And I'm still learning this. Trust me. Ask Judy. I jump to conclusions too quick, and I still have to remember, wait for the rest of the story. There's always more, and it's never as evil or as nefarious as we first believe.
And I
It
do the
never
same
is.
thing. I tend to jump to conclusions, but then I'll have to take a breath, stop myself. I will often literally go stick myself in the refrigerator. I open up the doors. I do, because it's that open refrigerator door syndrome. You walk and
Yeah,
you're in front of the fridge. You're like, how the heck did I get here? I
that's
call it.
right.
It's my little meditation thing. I stick my head in there, double doors, and I only come back out when the doors start yelling. They start dinging. But I've given myself time to calm down. But
Uh,
in that moment when I'm, coming back out and thawing out a little bit, I will say, okay, was whatever it was that was bothering me, was it true? Was it really true?
right.
And then
And
I put
that's
my critical thinking skills back into play where they should have been to
right.
start with.
Well, that's when you pull out that real powerful tool, the mirror. That's when you pull it back out and begin to just address things again. Just take a look and begin to reflect. I can't tell you how important it is just to give our times to think and reflect. We're just caught up with we're just constant input in our own society. We're being drilled with nonsense all day long, and you have to have the discipline to escape that. But I will tell you my lesson. Had I been available, I would have known Maurice was struggling. I would have known he had some issues in his life. I may not have saved his life, but you know what? It may not have been on my watch because I felt very responsible for that.
And the thing is, and we're talking about so many different things and so many important things. Honestly, you do have to come back. Right? And I'm saying that on the radio, so you can't tell
Okay.
me no. It's very tricky. but but
I'll be
we
glad to.
oh, thank you. But we do tend to spend an awful lot of time outside of ourselves. And I've had to learn immense gratitude. The first thing I do, you're talking about the things that you do when you're at the mirror, the three things. My first thing in the morning, before I even, jump out of bed and the devil says, "Oh crap, she's awake."
Hmm.
I'm talking out loud to my ceiling fan because I'm pretty sure that's where my guardian angel lives. And I'm looking at my ceiling fan and I'm saying out loud so I can hear it, and whoever is listening to me in the spirit realm, I don't, God, I don't know. And I'm saying, I'm so grateful for, and I'm speaking from the heart. And then I'm telling the cat to get off my bladder, but that's a whole other story. But gratitude, if we don't have it, if we don't practice it, if we don't take a moment or 10 to reflect and pay attention to what's going on around us at a personal level, I don't even know what to tell you. I think we're lost if we're not careful how we show up in the world.
Absolutely.
Ask you, I've got all kinds of questions to ask you. Career path, we've touched on that a bit. You've had a remarkable journey in healthcare leadership. So I guess my question is, how do you view the concept of a complete career path? What does that even mean?
Hmm, I'm not so sure. I careers so often in our own society are measured in financial success. Um,
Gotcha.
I'm not sure that that is exactly the way to measure your own path or journey. I would rather think that we're looking toward fulfillment of purpose. So, like my career has been all over the place. I call it career. It's really a collection of growth opportunities. Is more what I see it. Um, but I'm in a space that I care about, which is the most important, and that is incredibly relevant and it's essential to staying engaged. And I'm not certain how we do that with the way we define careers today in our own world. I'm talking in circles, but it's frustrating because I'm constantly in search of purpose. I'm constantly in search of making a difference somewhere, somehow. And it's hard to do in this day and age. It's really hard to do. It's also hard to do in our society where we value different things. Particularly as an older guy who still feels like they have something to share, or I have relevance in today's world, and I have enough scars and experiences that they're still purposeful. Uh, that's a challenge because my career is really not a career. It's really my life journey of purpose. And if I get paid for it, okay. If I don't get paid for it so much, that's okay too. It's at a point where I can't stop doing it. And that's where I am right now. And Judy and I have this conversation all the time. We should both be retired. We're we're of an age we should be retired. But we can't stop. We just can't stop. We love still giving back. We still love serving.
And here's the thing. I mean, you're talking about, you should be retired. I don't believe that I will ever retire. My plan outside of, yelling at kids to get off the grass is to probably pass away when I'm about 100 in my sleep after plotting world domination for the next day. I'm not quitting. I'm really not. You think I'm joking? I'm not. So, but here's the thing. And listen, there are a lot of young people who are incredibly bright, but if they're, younger than 24, 25, their prefrontal cortex is not developed. And they're saying things and doing things that you just look at them and say, man, I hope you survive. I really do. So there's something to be said for age and wisdom.
Well, true. But we have a society who has labeled, and that's a whole other discussion about labeling. Um, because I hate labels. I hate labels. I hate us labeling people in the interest of inclusion when it's more divisive. I think identifying ourselves as with a label divides us further rather than brings us together. That's just my view. But we have generational labels, and and it's frustrating to me because I'm in a boomer generation, and the boomers are like, oh well, yeah, yeah, boomer, sure, next, and you're going, well, just because you play with technology, kiddo, doesn't mean you know anything. You just have access to trash, in my mind, or to limited knowledge, or not even valid knowledge. You just have noise. You have access to noise.
Talking points,
And
that's all you get. Everything is
that's
talking
it.
points these
And
days.
and that goes back to this teaching the undergrads is please do something more than get information from TikTok or headlines. Read the article, then read the source documents for the article to eliminate the bias.
And use your critical thinking skills. If you
Absolutely.
don't have critical thinking skills, and they can be developed, so don't say, oh, well, I don't know. But you have to be aware that you have to dig deep every day. If you find an article or something that you're interested in, you're right, go read those source documents. I don't listen to legacy news. I haven't for 10, 12, 14 years. I refuse to let that garbage in my living room,
Yeah.
but I'm very well informed.
Yeah. And that's the part you have to find a way to have balanced input. Now, I have my own sources that I read, but I read a little bit of diversity. Judy says not so much, but I do. Um, but I also know what I believe. And I learn to get my information um, from sources that I had worked on. Well, let me just tell you another story real quick. When I was in the combat zone and I was commanding the trauma center there, which was a little unique because I was the only non-physician to ever command that trauma center in Iraq, which was the busiest in the country. We were collecting all the casualties from country and then flying them out every evening. Um, I happened to be there when Bob Woodruff, the ABC News uh, anchor, evening news anchor, was injured, and he was brought to our facility. And I remember getting the call on a Sunday afternoon to come in, and sure enough, they were bringing him into the ER at the time. Well, I locked down the place. I put his production crew and cameramen in a tent right next to mine, and they had a satellite phone connected to both his wife and to the president of ABC News. I had NBC News in my office demanding information, and I told him to have a seat over in my conference room, and I'd get to him when I had time. Well, this was a famous Pentagon correspondent for NBC News. Then I had Armed Forces News with a camera in my face, wanting quotes. I said, no, get out of my face. We've got a business to tend to. We'll get to you guys when we have time. Well, what I found was that they tried to use their celebrity to bully us into access. And I just wouldn't fall for it. So I confiscated all the cameras. Nobody could take a picture of him injured. I protected his privacy during the process. And I told my team, if anybody takes a picture, I will send them home instantly because we can't have a problem here. And he deserves privacy. His celebrity would be manifested wrong in the public space. So we took care of him, had surgery there. We flew him out that evening. And then the next day, the two neurosurgeons who operated him and myself, we started doing satellite interviews off the rooftop of a building near there with all of the ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, you name it, the networks. We would do live feeds. And it was amazing to me how how intrusive some of the media would become just over an event like that.
They are horrible. I think one of the biggest problems we have, this is just my personal opinion, one of the biggest enemies we have in this country, any country, is the media. And that's
Well,
all I have to say about that.
well, here's the rest of the story. So I knew that we were going to get inundated with lots of media who wanted to see this. We were the busiest trauma center in the world, and we were still in canvas tents, doing 25 major traumas a day, 25 helicopter landings a day, 450 staff, 22 surgical subspecialties, busy, busy place. I said, okay, I will allow all media to come, but here's my rules. And I mentioned this to the media at the base. I said, they can only bring one team at a time. When they arrive, they must sit with me for 2 hours. I will tell them not what they think we are, but I will tell them what we really are. And that we're just 20 hours from the point of injury until whatever their life is to be at the end under a quote healed status, which could be decades. We're 20 hours. And we're only 20 hours, but we're the most important 20 hours of that cycle of healing. And I said, and the other part I want you all to know is whatever story you walked in here with, forget it. Leave it here. because once you leave this brief, it's a 2-hour presentation. Once you leave this, you can go talk to anybody you want. You can ask them any question. Just do not get in the way of their health care. And you cannot leave until tomorrow morning at this time. You have to stay 24 hours. And they go, what? Well, my philosophy was they would forget their story. They would find another story in that 24 hours. But
Yeah, I
more than
see
that,
what you're doing.
they would bond with our team. And we never had a negative story. 15 to 20 and never a negative story about us.
Just take whatever their bias was and shoot it out to the world.
Yep.
I love that. Don, I reluctantly have to say we are out of time, and I'll say it again, you need to come back. But before I let
Okay.
you go, I'm going to nag. Before I let you go, do you have any kind of last thoughts to share? And where can people connect with you online?
So first of all, last thoughts. Always serve others. For goodness sake, find a life where you're making a difference in someone else's life. Find a place to serve where you feel fulfilled within yourself. And when you pull at that mirror each day, you can smile. That's important. The other part is you can find me. I'm at my LinkedIn is really where I live, is www.donald-taylor.com. Takes you right to my LinkedIn site. Reach me there, message me there, anything you want. You can also find me on the University of Texas Dallas faculty list there and my program, and reach me there as well. You can email me at dontaylortx@gmail.com as well if you'd like to reach me. I love to talk to people, love to share thoughts.
It has been a genuine pleasure having you, and I look forward to having you come back soon. So, to our audience, and I'm losing my voice, so kind of bear with me here. To our audience, as we conclude today's episode, your feedback means an awful lot to me. And if you found the show helpful, please support us with a quick review on iTunes. And why? Why do I ask that? Because your input is vital in my mission to inspire and empower more individuals. So don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a review, and share your Partner in Success Radio with friends and colleagues. And be sure to go to LinkedIn and find Don Taylor. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Don, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.